we're happy to be here in Boston tonight for this performance. Oh boy, that's a good one. What decade of music? If I had to pick one, I'd have to say it'd be the early 70s, because then I could live through all of the 70s and play all that super funky music. There was a lot of great stuff going on and a lot of mixing of music, and there'd still be a holdover from the 60s, and I feel like the 70s were a period where people were still interested in recording and developing artists for a long term. If you think about some of the greatest artists that are around today, storied artists and singers, and they really came through the 70s. The first album that I owned, it was probably a Sesame Street album of Oscar the Grouch or something. I don't know, you know, had a little Fisher-Price record player, and it was fun. Records are still fun. I would, if money and space were not an object, I'd have several 9-foot pianos and a pipe organ, a harpsichord, and I have some of the instruments that I would have. I already have a Hammond organ and vintage Rhodes and clavinet. I'd buy a Moog modular synthesizer. I'd buy several guitars from the 50s, basses from the 50s, and a bunch of really great old recording gear, and put it in my great old recording studio with hundreds of thousands of dollars of recording equipment from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles. It's a fantastic piece of music. And Blue and Green by Bill Evans, co-opted by Miles Davis. Well, I wish that I could say that I only know about some artists, but there are some artists that I think are lesser known that should be more known about. And some of them have somewhat of a cult following. There's a drummer from the West Coast named Lewis Cole. He's doing some pretty interesting stuff, and he's got a band called Knower. That stuff is pretty cool. There's an amazing piano player and composer named Jim Beard, who actually tours with Steely Dan, but his music, his composition is really incredible. I'd like to co-bill with Aretha Franklin with the Live at the Fillmore West band, because that's some of the funkiest shit I've ever heard. That band is so unbelievable, and that recording is just, it's perfect every time I listen to it. I think I'd come back as a cockatoo. We have a new album. It's called FORQ, pronounced FORQ, F-O-R-Q, and it's available on iTunes, and it's on Robodope Records, Ground Up Records. You can order the whole thing that's DVD and CD from Bandcamp. And look for us next year.